All right, get ready for today's deep dive, folks. We're going to be tackling a topic that might make a few people blush.
Oh,
Yeah, we're diving into the sounds people make during sex.
the symphony of intimacy.
Exactly. We've got this article here. It's called 17 Types of Noises Guys Will Make During Sex. And, well, I have a feeling it's going to be pretty entertaining.
It's certainly a unique area of study. Sounds, often considered purely instinctual, can actually offer some interesting insights into human behavior.
Right. Like, are these noises just involuntary reactions, or is there something more going on? What do you think?
Well, that's a great question. Some sounds, like let's say the half-sneeze burp that the article talks about, might be purely physiological,
Hmm.
possibly linked to those involuntary muscle spasms during arousal.
Ah, so like a reflex almost.
Exactly. But other sounds, they seem to have a more communicative function.
Interesting. So this article, it breaks down these sounds into all these relatable categories. Like, remember trying to keep it down for your roommates? They call it considerate whispering.
Ah, yes, the classic roommate awareness whisper. It really shows how, even in intimate moments, we're still thinking about, well, social dynamics.
It's true. Okay, but what about those more enthusiastic noises? Like the article calls rhythmic grunting a sex staple. What's your take on that?
Hmm. Rhythmic grunting, especially when it's synchronized with movement, could be seen as a form of nonverbal mirroring.
Mirroring.
Yeah, like when partners mirror each other's movements and sounds, it can create a sense of connection,
Yeah.
a shared experience.
Like a dance almost.
Exactly. And the synchronization, it can actually heighten arousal and lead to a more satisfying experience for both people.
Wow, I never thought of it like that. So we've got the whisperers, the grunters, and then there are those noises that, well, maybe we'd rather not acknowledge. Yeah, the article calls them weird noises they immediately regret, like hoobalookagon. Come on.
Ah, I think those moments speak to the inherent vulnerability of intimacy, right? We let go, we allow ourselves to be fully present in our bodies, and sometimes unexpected sounds emerge.
It's true. And that's kind of what makes it, I don't know, human. The
Exactly.
article even mentions awkward silence, which I think we can all agree can be a whole other kind of awkward.
Silence, it can be interpreted in so many ways, especially in a charged situation like sex. Some might find it unsettling, while others might experience it as a moment of heightened focus or even, well, a deeper connection that goes beyond words.
Wow, that's deep. So it's not always a bad thing, huh?
Not necessarily, no.
This article also distinguishes between dirty talk and real fucking dirty talk.
Ah, yes.
I'm curious, what role does language play in shaping these experiences?
Well, that's where the verbal aspect of communication really comes in. Dirty talk, when it's consensual, of course, can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It allows partners to explicitly express their desires, their fantasies, and it creates a shared narrative of arousal.
So it's like adding a whole other layer of communication on top of all the nonverbal stuff we've been talking about.
Exactly. But as you said, consent is key here, right? What
Mhm.
one person finds hot, another might find, well, uncomfortable.
So how do we navigate those differences? I mean, how do we get better at communicating what we like and don't like, especially in the heat of the moment?
I think it starts with self-awareness, reflecting on your own desires, your boundaries, and understanding what kind of language feels good to you. That's a great starting point.
So know yourself first.
Precisely. And then it's about creating that space for open dialogue, where both partners feel safe to express their needs and their preferences without judgment.
It makes sense. So we're moving from those purely instinctive sounds into the more intentional realm of communication. And that brings us to a category I think everyone has an opinion on, the I'm coming announcement.
hmm
Is it always genuine, do you think? Or could there be a bit of performance involved sometimes?
Hmm. It's definitely possible that some vocalizations during sex are influenced by, a desire to please your partner or manage their expectations.
So you're saying it's not always black and white.
Exactly. Trust and open communication, that's the foundation of any healthy relationship. And that applies to the bedroom, too.
I think that's a really important point. We've been talking about these sounds as communication, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to trust and understanding.
Absolutely. It's about creating a safe space for exploration, for vulnerability, where both partners feel empowered to express themselves authentically, both verbally and non-verbally.
So we've talked about whispers and grunts and all those questionable sounds, but what about the more subtle noises? The article mentions super low moans, like especially for people who are maybe a little shy.
Ah, yes, those subtle vocalizations.
Huh.
They can be incredibly powerful.
Mm.
You know, they often indicate a deep level of comfort and trust, allowing for vulnerability and a sense of shared intimacy.
It's like a secret language almost.
Exactly.
Yeah. But what about when things go quiet? The article pointed out awkward silence can be a little, well, a little creepy. How can silence be interpreted, in a sexual context?
Silence during sex? Well, it can be multifaceted. For some, it might be perceived as a lack of engagement, sure. But for others, it might signal intense focus or even a preference for nonverbal communication in that moment.
Oh, that's interesting. So it really depends on the person and the dynamic, right?
Precisely. It's about understanding your partner and their individual style of expressing themselves.
It makes me think about how some people are super vocal at the gym, while others are all business and quiet focus. Maybe it's kind of similar in the bedroom.
That's a great analogy. Everyone has their own way of experiencing and expressing themselves during intimate moments.
That's true. The article also mentions heavy breathing as like a classic sex noise. Is that purely physical, or could there be an emotional component to it as well?
Well, while primarily a physiological response to increased activity and arousal, heavy breathing can certainly take on an emotional dimension during sex.
Oh.
Well, think about it. Hearing your partner's breath quicken, that can be arousing in itself, further fueling the passion and desire.
Oh, I see. So it's like a feedback loop.
Exactly. The physical sensation leads to the heavy breathing, which then in turn heightens the arousal. It's a beautiful demonstration of the interconnectedness of our physical and emotional experiences.
Okay, this next one I got to ask about because the article kind of just brushes past it. It's the weird and embarrassing high-pitched squeals.
Yes.
We've all been there, right? Or at least heard a story. Any insights into those unexpected sounds?
Well, it's important to remember that losing a bit of control, vocally or otherwise, can actually be part of the excitement, the spontaneity of sex.
Oh, that's a good point.
Those unexpected sounds, they might be tied to a particularly intense sensation, or simply reflect an individual's unique way of expressing themselves.
It's a good reminder that things don't always have to be, picture perfect.
Absolutely.
Embracing those unexpected moments, even the slightly embarrassing ones, can actually make the experience more authentic and enjoyable.
Exactly. It's about letting go of inhibitions and allowing yourself to be fully present in the moment.
Okay, listeners, time for a little pop quiz. True or false? Gushy, sweet words of encouragement during sex are more common in movies than real life. What do you think?
Well, while romantic gestures and verbal affirmations are certainly amplified in Hollywood, it's not to say they can't or don't happen in real life.
So true.
But keep in mind, media often portrays an idealized version of intimacy, which doesn't always reflect the complexities and nuances of real-life relationships.
Good point. But hey, just because it's a movie trope doesn't mean we can't, borrow a page from their script. A well-placed compliment or a whispered affirmation can go a long way.
Absolutely. Words of affirmation, when spoken genuinely, can deepen intimacy and enhance the emotional bond between partners.
Okay, let's tackle a noise category that tends to spark a lot of debate. The "I'm coming" announcement. Is it always genuine, or is there a chance some folks might be, I don't know, exaggerating for effect?
It's certainly possible that some vocalizations during sex are influenced by a desire to please one's partner or manage their expectations. However, judging the authenticity of someone's expressions during such an intimate act is a complex and sensitive matter.
So it's a gray area. We shouldn't jump to conclusions.
Exactly. Trust and open communication are paramount in any intimate relationship. Rather than questioning someone's sincerity, it's more productive to focus on creating a dynamic where both partners feel comfortable expressing themselves honestly and openly.
That makes sense. I like that. We've been diving deep into these sounds as communication, but it ultimately comes back to trust and understanding within the relationship, right?
Absolutely. It's about creating a safe space for exploration, for vulnerability, where both partners feel empowered to express themselves authentically, both verbally and non-verbally.
This article also points to jagged, irregular breathing as a pretty reliable indicator of, well,
Yeah.
the big finish.
Jagged breathing, often accompanied by involuntary muscle contractions, is indeed a common physiological response to orgasm. It's a moment of intense physical release and pleasure, often reflected in those audible changes in breathing.
So if you hear that, you know things are getting real. And speaking of getting real, the article ends with a rather hilarious category: screaming.
Oh.
Yeah, it even jokes that it could mean someone's really into it, or they might have just broken their penis.
While hopefully a rare occurrence, it's important to remember that not all vocalizations during sex are positive or indicative of pleasure.
Right. Sometimes a scream is just a scream.
Exactly.
It's crucial to prioritize consent and safety above all else.
Absolutely. Checking in with your partner throughout the experience is crucial to ensure both parties feel comfortable and respected.
We've covered a lot of ground today. From shy moans to enthusiastic grunts to the occasional awkward squeak. It seems like these sounds, they're more than just noise. They offer a fascinating glimpse into, well, the complexities of human connection and desire.
And that's a beautiful way to put it. These sounds, often overlooked or even dismissed, can be incredibly revealing. They offer a window into our deepest desires, our anxieties, our
It's
vulnerabilities.
like we're cracking the code of a secret language, the language of intimacy.
Exactly.
And maybe by understanding this language better, we can create more fulfilling and meaningful connections.
Precisely. It's an ongoing process of discovery and communication,
Yep.
both within ourselves and with our partners.
All right, listeners, that wraps up our deep dive into the surprisingly complex world of sex noises. We learned that those grunts and moans and whispers, they're more than just sounds. They're a fascinating glimpse into psychology, communication, and the wonderfully diverse ways people experience pleasure. Big thanks to our expert for sharing their incredible insights. Okay, so as we wrap up our exploration of all these intimate sounds, I'm curious, what's the big takeaway here? What can our listeners actually do with this knowledge? This newfound knowledge of the language of sex noises.
Well, what I find so fascinating is that these sounds, often dismissed as just purely instinctive or even embarrassing, they offer a unique window into the complex interplay of, well, biology, psychology, and even social dynamics, all during intimate moments.
Yeah, okay, I get that, but how can we actually apply this knowledge
Yeah.
to our own lives and relationships?
I think the biggest takeaway is that these sounds, however, involuntary or imperfect, they're a form of communication, right? They give us these glimpses into our desires, our anxieties, even our vulnerabilities.
Hmm. So by paying attention to these sounds, we can maybe understand ourselves and our partners better.
Exactly. By tuning into these sounds and the context in which they occur, we can gain some valuable insights into our own and our partner's experiences, preferences, even boundaries.
That's really interesting. It's almost like we're learning a new language, like the language of intimacy.
Exactly. And like with any language, fluency comes with practice, with attention, and a willingness to communicate openly and honestly.
So what would be the homework assignment for our listeners today? What's one thing they can do to, put this knowledge into practice?
I would encourage listeners to reflect on their own experiences. What sounds do they make during sex, and what do those sounds mean to them? How do they interpret their partner's sounds? And most importantly, how can they use this knowledge to foster, well, better communication and deeper intimacy in the relationships?
That's a great challenge. It's not just about decoding the noises. It's about using that understanding to create a more open and fulfilling dynamic.
Absolutely. It's about moving beyond assumptions and embracing those unique ways that we each experience and express pleasure.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for, sharing your expertise with us today.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you a new perspective on the symphony of sounds that color our most intimate moments. Remember, those grunts and moans and whispers, they're more than just noise. They're a fascinating glimpse into, the complexities of human connection and desire. Until next time, stay curious.